This conference will now be recorded.
Sorry. So we are now telling that, okay, fine, this is a snapshot service, and this is one of the available services to just go ahead and, let's say, take a backup of the data that you have, let's say, inside a virtual machine. But is it, let's say, the best service that is available out there to go ahead and back your services up? Not really. Definitely, it's not a best service that is available out there in the market, or definitely not a best service that is available out there in Azure. The reason being, there are a bit of limitations to this service. First thing, there is no option whatsoever to schedule it out, because as a user, I am running a virtual machine service, and there are a lot of data that is being written on my virtual machine at a very good interval of time. So the scheduling option is something that I don't see in the snapshot service at all. So I do not have an option to go ahead and say, okay, fine, please go ahead and schedule this out for, let's say, about 24 hours. Like, let's say once in 24 hours I need someone or something to automatically trigger, let's say, this particular service backup and reserve the backup. So I don't have an option to schedule it out. So this is one of the biggest limitation of, let's say, a snapshot service out here. The second option, or the second thing that I come here is that, okay, let me take this out. Second thing that I come here. So first thing, let me write it out, is scheduling. Second thing is that, okay, fine, you're taking a backup today. Are you retaining that backup till some point in time? Because again, I am a user, or I, let's say, as a company, wants to understand on what is my retention policy. Meaning, let's say today is the 1st of January. I have taken a snapshot today. So till when am I retaining this out? Like, what is, let's say, the date when I want to delete it, and what is, let's say, the date till where I'm preserving this particular backup, so that at any given point in time, if, let's say, something happens to my data, I want to go to that particular date, take that particular snapshot, and then restore that particular data. These are called point in time restores, PITR. Like, can you do a point in time restore? No, not really. With this particular service, you will have to be a bit vigilant. You will have to take these backups, preserve these backups, and etc., and so on and so forth. Third, snapshots are easily deleted. You can just go ahead onto a snapshot, just click on the delete button. Microsoft isn't even going to ask you a yes option there. It'll just go ahead and delete that particular snapshot. So the protection for the snapshot data, or for the snapshots, is not guaranteed. Not guaranteed. You can just go ahead, anyone, let's say, in your organization can accidentally also delete it out. So if you accidentally delete it out, then there is no point in taking a backup. So you're not doing all these things. So scheduling is, let's say, one of the biggest issues with something known as a snapshot. You don't have an option to schedule things out. Retention policy, meaning I do not have a proper agenda till when I need to set, let's say, a retention and etc. Third thing is that snapshot, the protection is not guaranteed, so you can just go ahead and delete things out here. So addressing these three, or let's say addressing all these concerns, there is another service known as backup and recovery services in Microsoft, especially for virtual machines. Like, we implement this a lot for virtual machines to make sure that the resources are protected. And how does a backup and recovery work? Let's see that. So let me go into, let's say, my Azure portal, and let me start creating a virtual machine. So let's say I'll just go ahead and, let's say, create firstly a resource group. I'll say test RG, and I'll just create this resource group in a location like North Europe. and I'll say review and create. And let me go ahead and create this service out here. And let me go ahead and create a virtual machine out here. So I'll just create a Windows 2019 server. So I'll say, okay, fine, this is a VM1. And I'll just pick up a location like, let's say, West US 2, where I have free services eligible out there. So I'll say, okay, fine. Let's see, the size is not available for the subscription. Let's select another, or let's do a North Europe. And I believe the size is available out here. So I'll just create a virtual machine in North Europe, and I'll say this is a test user, and give all the passwords and extra. So giving the ID, the password, I am opening the port called RDP so that I can go ahead and log into this machine at a later point in time. I'll say next. I'm not doing anything here. I'm just giving a premium SSD out here. Networking, I'm still maintaining the same networking out here, and in management, I'll just go ahead and disable the boot diagnostics. I'll say review and create. So I'm not doing anything different. I'm just going ahead and creating a virtual machine out here in a location called North Europe, and I'll say create. So let's see what is the agenda that I do have right now. So I have a machine here, and this machine has, let's say, one disk, an OS disk that is attached to it. And inside that disk, I'll just go ahead and create a very simple file out here. I'll say a very sample file or something like that. So this is the OS disk, and this is the virtual machine, and the OS disk is connected to this particular virtual machine right now. And I want to back up the entire machine, the disk, the data, the entire operating system, and I want to maintain this data in the form of a backup. So the service that helps me out here in order to take a backup, or the option that I go for right now, is an option called as backup and restore that you'll find within the virtual machine. So I'll say it is backup and restore, and I'll say, okay, fine, I'll use this service in order to take a backup of the entire virtual machine along with whatever disks that are attached to it, along with the operating system, everything that you can think of. So I'm doing a complete backup of this particular virtual machine out here. The question is that I'll take a backup, great, but where do I store this backup? Like, how do I store this backup? So option A, can I take this backup and store it inside the virtual machine? Yes, no, maybe. No,
No.
because if I take a backup, store it inside the same virtual machine, if the virtual machine crashes, then even the backup is gone. So there is no point in doing that. So I'll need to place it somewhere external. And I will now use another service in Azure called a recovery services vault. This service in Azure is called a recovery services vault. And the biggest advantage of having a recovery services vault is that recovery services vault comes with something known as a backup policy, wherein you can tell the recovery services vault on what is the frequency of your backups. Do you want to do a daily backup? So the options that the recovery services vault has right now is that, do you want to do a daily backup? Do you want to do a weekly backup? Do you want to do a monthly backup? Or do you want to do a yearly backup? You can have a combination of all these things. You can have a daily backup that is going on. So a daily backup is a 24-hour backup basically. So for every 24 hour, you can mention that, okay, fine, please take a backup at one given point in time. Please go ahead and take it out. And most importantly, a recovery services vault right now allows you to set something known as, or allows you to basically define something known as retention. You can say that the backup that I take on a daily basis, please let's say retain it for about 30 days. This can be 180, any number, it is fine. I'm just giving you a number here. I'm just giving an example here. So you can say, okay, fine, the backup that I take right now on the 1st of January, please go ahead and make sure to retain it or to save it for the coming 30 days. Meaning, please go ahead. Yes, if you want to delete it, yes, you delete it. But just a second. Yes. If you want to delete it, yes, delete it. But please delete it on the 1st of February. Until then, don't touch this backup. Don't delete this backup at all. And I am now setting a schedule to the backup, meaning on the 1st of January, I'll have a backup. 2nd of January, I'll have a backup. 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th. Every day, I'll have a backup. And let's say the backup taken on the 2nd of January will be retained till the 2nd of February because the policy now says that please say or please save this for 30 days. You can also basically give a weekly schedule. So you can say in 1 day or a 2 day of a week, let's say on the Friday of a week, I want you to take a backup of the entire week. So please go ahead, take it out and also retain it. You can do the monthly, you can do the yearly backup as well. And you can also retain this backup, meaning the question now is that, okay, fine, you're saving all these backups here, great. But what if I come here and delete this vault? Your backups are all lost. So I can come here and I can say, okay, fine, I want to delete this out. But a deletion of a vault is not simple. A vault comes with something known as soft delete option. A vault comes with something known as soft delete option, which will not let you delete it. And even accidentally, if you delete it out, this will say, okay, fine, it's fine, you deleted me out, not a problem. But I have a feature known as a soft delete option, which will preserve me for 14 days. Preserve me as in preserve me, preserve the backups, everything for the next 14 days. If you're still okay, if you still say that this was intentional and not do anything for the next 14 days, I'll go ahead and it'll get deleted. But it'll give you a 14-day buffer. That, okay, fine, you have a 14-day buffer, and if you hit a delete button, all your backups will, let's say, go into something known as a, into, let's say, a retainable state. You can go ahead and again retain this vault and retain all the backups inside it. That's the biggest advantage, or that's the biggest safety that Microsoft assures you when you go for a service known as backup and recovery. So unlike snapshots, which was just taken at any given point in time, because I felt that, okay, fine, at this point in time I want to take a snapshot, so I'll basically go ahead and take a snapshot out there, and basically there is no retention, there's no policy whatsoever. So this is called as a stateless mechanism, because it doesn't really have a state. You're taking a snapshot based on the best practice that you know. Someone else might have a bit, better practice. They'll do a different snapshot, meaning there is no proper state or there is no proper explanation on why you're doing this out. Whereas when you come to a backup service out here, this is called a stateful, which has a proper state. So that's a stateless, and this is a stateful, and this is how backup and recovery services enriches you or basically helps you in order to protect your resources. Basically, make sure you have a better position so that you can go ahead and, let's say, retain your data at any given point in time. So this helps you in something known as point in time restore. ITR. You can have a point in time restore out here. Okay. Any questions still here? Anyone? Any questions still here, guys? Anyone online, offline? Anyone? These backups are charged, yes. These backups are at a chargeable price, but the charge is minimal. It's not like very heavy the way that you pay for a virtual machine. It's not very heavy. You charge or you basically pay for the recovery services world. So you have, let's say, an hourly basis, but the charge is very less. Okay, any questions here? Okay, so let me see, or how can we enable this service out? how can we basically start working with the service and etc. So as of now, in my resource group, I have all these things out here. So I have, let's say, the virtual network, the virtual machine, the public IP, NIC cards, and everything. So I'll go inside the virtual machine. Just give it a second. I'll go inside the virtual machine service. And once I go inside the virtual machine service, and in here, okay, in here, I have something known as backups. So I'll just say backup. As and when I see under operations, I have something known as a backup service basically that is getting reflected out here. So I'll just say I'll just click on this particular service and it will now take me into the page where it will ask me, okay, I understand you want to do a backup. Can you please tell me what is the recovery services vault? Because for a backup, I cannot back your virtual machine without a recovery services vault out here. Now the question here is that, okay, fine, I already have a recovery services vault, but I have it in a different region than the virtual machine. Can you back it up? No, you cannot do that. You'll need to have a recovery services vault in the same region as a virtual machine is. Because virtual machines, virtual networks are region sensitive. They are regional resources. So you cannot basically do, let's say, or have a recovery services vault in a different region than the virtual machine service out here. So that's the reason it says the select existing is grayed out because I do not have a recovery services vault in this particular region called North Europe. So it's telling me, okay, fine, do you want to create a backup vault? And it says, okay, fine, I have a name for you. I can suggest a name and I can basically tell you that you know what you need to do out here. So I'll say, okay, fine, great. This name is not okay with me. I'll just go ahead and give my own name. I'll say Recovery Services Vault RSV test demo or something like this. So giving a meaningful name to it. And after giving a meaningful name to it, it's asking me what is the resource group in which you want to create this vault in. I'll say, okay, fine, this is a test RG. And now it's telling me that, okay, fine, can you please choose a backup policy? Because as a recovery services vault, I need to know how do you want to back up the service or how do you want to enable backups and everything. I'll say, okay, fine. And it gives me a default backup policy out here. I'll say, I don't want this policy. I want to edit this out. And it says, okay, fine, create a policy. So I'll just say demo policy test, something like this. And now I need to schedule or I need to make sure that I'm giving a proper backup schedule out here. So right now it's telling me, okay, fine, I am giving you a daily, a monthly, a yearly, and etc. So if I once click this, I click this out here. Right now it says daily and weekly because you need at least one schedule which is going on a daily or a weekly basis. So I'll say, okay, fine. I'll go for a daily basis firstly. And I want this particular backup service to, let's say, go and let's say, try creating the backup at around, let's say, 7 a.m. my time, which is IST. So I can say 7 a.m. and I can say IST is like UTC plus 5:30. So I'll just come down and I'll say, fine, this is 5:30. So Chennai, Kolkata, Mumbai, Delhi. I'll say this is 7 a.m. IST. And whatever that you do, whatever that you take at this point at around 7 a.m., please store it for the next 30 days. I can also say, okay, fine, if it's not 30, I can also say it's a 365. Even this works. So I can also say this is, let's say, 7 days. Even this works. So depending upon what your business scenario is, what is your use case, what is your use case scenario? Normally we do a 30. So that it's a 1 month, it's a daily backup basically. So we have backups every day that are stored for 30 days and extra. And this is where I was telling that you can also go ahead and configure a weekly backup, wherein telling that, okay, fine, on let's say some days of the week, let's say on a Monday or a Tuesday or a Sunday or something like that, at around 7, please go ahead and take a backup and retain this backup for what? 12 weeks. So the retention period or the retention unit of a daily backup is in days, weekly backup is in weeks, monthly is in months, yearly is in years. So if I now say that, okay, fine, I want to go ahead and also configure a monthly backup, I'll say based upon, let's say, on the first week or something like this, or let's say I'll do a day. I'll say on the 30th day of a month, or on the last day of a month, please take a backup at around 7 a.m. Maintain it for 60 months, 5 years. Please go ahead and maintain this for 60 months and etc. I can also configure a backup for yearly, and I can say day on, let's say, the last month and the last day of that particular month. Please go ahead and take a backup, retain it for 10 years. So whatever that you're taking on a yearly basis, please also go ahead and retain this for about let's say the next 10 years basically. So these are the options basically, or these are all the options what the recovery services vault offers, and this is called a backup policy. Whatever you're configuring right now is a backup policy which has a definite state. So if someone comes and looks at this particular backup policy, they'll now be able to understand what kind of, let's say, a norm your organization is following, or what kind of a structure your organization is actually following out here. So for now, I'll just disable, let's say, the yearly, the weekly. I'll just configure a daily backup policy, and I'll say, okay, this is the backup policy that I need. So it's a demo test policy, and the backup frequency is something like this. So I'll daily take the backup at around 7 a.m. IST, and I will, let's say, retain this backup for about 30 days from now. So every backup that, so I'll start the backup, let's say, from 7 a.m. IST tomorrow, because 7 a.m. IST is already crossed today. So I cannot take a backup going back in time. So it'll start from the 22nd of December to, let's say, whichever time that I stop this backup service out. And once I do this, I will now go ahead and say enable backup. It says, okay, fine, I'll initialize the deployment. So the first thing it's doing is that it's creating the recovery services vault in itself. Let's go here. The first thing it's doing is that it's going ahead and creating something known as a recovery services vault, and it's attaching a policy to that particular recovery services vault, and it's enabling something known as protection for my virtual machine, or backup service for my virtual machine. So this might take about a minute or two. So until that point, guys, any questions anyone has? Anyone, any questions?
Yes, sir. So, will it allow us to configure all the policies? Like we have a daily backup, weekly backup, right, and yearly backup too.
Yes.
So, will it allow us to configure all those?
Will will DevOps configure all those? Like, was that your question?
No, 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 no. Like before we are deploying this thing, you have shown
Mhm.
us multiple options, right? I mean, the different kinds of backup policies we have.
Yes. Yes.
Say, for example, initially you have choose 30 days policy, and later
Hmm.
you drop down and selected weekly policy, something, right?
Right.
So my question is that will it allow us to select all those options at a time?
Yes, it will allow all those options at a time. You can go ahead and select all those options at a time, meaning you can do a combination of weekly, monthly, daily, or weekly, daily, weekly, monthly, and yearly. You can have a combination of all those things out.
Okay, okay.
And then second question is that will you do that in a real-time environment?
Actually,
Depends
no.
upon, yeah, I mean, depends upon the policy of your organization. If your organization wants, let's say, yearly backups also, you can do a daily and, let's say, yearly, a combination of both. So you definitely need to have a daily or a weekly backup. That is for sure. After that, a weekly, a monthly, and a yearly are optional. If you want to go ahead and protect your resource additionally, you can go ahead and do that.
Okay. And by any chance, did you see that any policy configured for yearly backup?
Yes, we do see, because for resources that are running production workloads, meaning very, very important machines out there, we have yearly backup policies that will go ahead and save it for about 5 years. So that at any point in time, we can go ahead and restore one huge virtual machine, which is taken, let's say, at a yearly backup policy, and we can basically, get the machine up and running.
Okay. Thank you.
And this is one of the work what we do as a DevOps engineers, because as a DevOps, it's development, a bit of development and operations also, and this comes under operations. So we make sure to help the operations team in order to enable all these backups, protect the resources, and etc. So this is a pure operational, let's say, or an operational work out there that we do out here. So now let me go into the resource group out here. And if I now look at the resource group, I have something known as the recovery services vault. So I have the vault with me that is created in the North Europe region. So wherever my virtual machine is created, I went ahead and created the vault there. And once I go into, let's say, the virtual machine service right now, and once I, let's say, again back up here, you have all these options right now, which is okay, fine. You have a backup and you have restore VM, file recovery, restore to a secondary region, meaning not this region. If this particular region is down, please go ahead and restore it to restore it to some other region out here, and etc. And it says okay, fine, there is no backup triggered yet, because at this point in time you have configured a backup to happen at around 7 a.m. IST. So I'll have to wait for one full day in order to take a backup. But let's say I don't want to do that. I want to go ahead and trigger a backup right away. I can say backup now, and I can say please retain it to, let's say, the 20th of January, because it's a 1 month cycle. And I can also reduce the date here or increase the date here. Anything is okay. And now it says okay, fine, I'll trigger the backup for you, and this service will go ahead and, let's say, trigger a backup. As of now, all these options are grayed out. The restore VM, the file recovery, and all these options are, let's say, grayed out, because I do not have a backup at all. I don't have anything with me right now because I just enabled my backup. So right now it says okay, fine, I have triggered the backup for you. It says trigger the backup for the virtual machine, and I'll say okay, fine. Now I have something known as view all jobs here. I can say view all jobs, and it says there's a backup job that is running in the backend, wherein firstly I configured the backup. Secondly, this is taking the backup. Now, the time that it usually takes for one full backup, meaning I just am backing up my entire virtual machine without any data. It's just the data with all the operating system files and everything. So I'm backing up just the bare metal data, meaning all that comes with the operating system, the C drive files and etc. So the time that it takes for one backup out here will be somewhere around 1 hour, like above 1 hour, like about 1 hour, 10 minutes, or 1 hour, 15 minutes, etc. This is the amount of time it will take for one backup out here. And depending upon the data, this time can go up. If let's say you have GBs of data, this time can also go up as well. So this is how I enable a backup. And after I enable a backup, this is how I can check the backup out. So I came to the virtual machine service and I said backup, and I said view all jobs, and it said there's a backup job that is running in the backend. You can do this, or you can directly go into, let's say, something known as a recovery services vault out here, which is another which is, let's say, another resource. And under this resource you have something known as backup items. You can go here, and here you have backup items, and it says okay, fine, I am backing up one particular item here, which is an Azure virtual machine, and it says okay, fine, this is being backed up. So if I click on this, it'll again show me that okay, fine, this is the virtual machine that's being backed up. And I am again coming back to the same screen. I can say view all jobs, and I can look at the job also. So I can view this and I can visit this in this way as well. And once the backup is done, like after 1.5 hour, once the backup is done, I'll be able to see these options enabled: restore VM, file recovery, and everything. So as of now, these options will be disabled. You won't be able to see this option until and unless basically you have at least one backup. Here it tells that you do not have a restore point. There is no restore point whatsoever available. So I cannot go ahead and restore things out. So in order for this demo, what I did is that I created another virtual machine and enabled a backup service yesterday in the night. So let me go there and let me say resource groups. And I have a resource group with the name called backup RG that is situated in a location called East US. So the same setup. I've done the same setup, whatever we did today in the morning. I've done the same setup, but what I did is that I enabled the backup service and I said that please schedule a backup at around 12 a.m. in my time or 1 a.m. in my time so that the backup can trigger and I can basically do a demo on this one. So if I go into the backup service out here, once I have a backup, this is how it look like. It says backup now, it says restore VM, it says file recovery and everything. It has all these options being enabled. And I'm able to see something known as an application consistent backup. It says, okay, fine, I have taken an entire backup of your virtual machine. And this backup is application consistent, meaning whatever application is running on your virtual machine, if you restore this backup, that virtual machine will come back again, or that application will come back again. So all these are called as app consistent or application consistent backups out here. Now, if I look at the job out here, let's say I do a view all job, and let me load this out. I'm able to see this one. So it says demo VM, and I had a backup basically operation that got triggered yesterday, which took around 1 hour, 1 minute, and 12 seconds. This is the duration what it took around. And after this time, I now have a backup. And let's say my virtual machine is going down. I want to now, let's say, go ahead and restore my virtual machine, or let's say I want to get the backup data. There are two options what Microsoft gives you. You can either go for a restore VM. This option is known as a restore VM, meaning once I say restore VM out here, it will now ask me, okay, fine, what is the backup point that you want to select? In my case, I only have one, but in a real-time environment, you'll have like a lot of backup points where you can go ahead and let's say select, and you can do a point in time restore out here. So I'll say select the restore point, and since I have only one thing here, I'll say okay, fine. This is the restore point that I actually want to select. And once this is selected, now it will ask me, do you want to create a new virtual machine or do you want to basically convert this backup into a disk and attach to a running virtual machine? You can do two things. So you can create a new virtual machine, or let's say you can create a disk from it. So if I say replace existing, it says okay, fine. I'm creating a disk out here. The disk basically that is created will be attached to an existing virtual machine, or you can go ahead and let's say create a new virtual machine out here. So I'll say okay, fine. Please create a new virtual machine, and then I can enter the name of the virtual machine, then the resource group, the subnet, and you have something known as a staging location. Meaning, in order to restore this virtual machine, you'll need to create a temporary storage account. You need to have a temporary storage account out here, and you need to select that particular storage account and then say restore. So again, restore type is let's say create a virtual machine, then you can say the name of the virtual machine out here, the resource group, the virtual network, the subnet, all these things, and then something very important which is called a staging location, wherein you can say okay, fine, please go ahead, select a storage account, first restore all the data inside the storage account and then transfer the data into the virtual machine. That's how the process is going to happen. Now this is a virtual machine restoration. Now I want you all to try it. I'm not trying this out. I want you all to try this out. So please go ahead, get some hands on with this. So all these options are pretty self-explanatory, wherein it says restore type is this, the name of the virtual machine, please give a name to the virtual machine out here, the name of the resource group, the virtual network, the subnet out here, and something known as a staging location, where please go ahead and let's say give a storage account name here. So please create a storage account in the same location. Let's say I have it in North Europe, so please go ahead and create a storage account in North Europe and select that particular storage account out here and hit the restore button, and let me know how much of time it's taking to restore this out. Now this is one option. The other option is wherein I come in, I say okay, fine, I don't want to do a restore VM, like I don't need the virtual machine, I just need the data inside that virtual machine. Just give the data because I am not interested in getting the virtual machine up and running. At this point, I'm only interested in getting all the data or extracting all the data in the virtual machine. So Microsoft also gives you an option known as file recovery. You can either recover your VM or recover the files inside your VM. And once I hit the file recovery option out here, it tells me, okay, great. This is the last backup point that you have. This is, let's say, in this week, there is only one backup that I basically see out here. So I'll select this out, and it says, okay, fine. Can you please go ahead and download this executable? So Microsoft is asking me that I will give you a .exe file. Please go ahead and download it. So I'll say, okay, fine, download the executable. And it says, okay, fine, I'm generating the password out here and all that stuff. And in a minute, it'll go ahead and, let's say, give me something known as an exe file. And one thing that you need to observe out here, guys, is that yes, it's giving me an exe file, great, but it's also telling me that once you have the exe file, you will need a password here, and I'll give you the password. So can you tell me, why do you need a password out here? Anyone? Security purpose, okay, but I'm sorry. Okay, anyone can see the file. Yes, that's true. Anything else?
It's a virtual machine password,
No.
username and password.
Not really. So Microsoft is generating a password for me. Now, if you see this out, I'll just copy this password out here. So I'll firstly download this file. So it'll take a minute and say, okay, fine, please go ahead and download this out. So I'll download this, come here, copy this to my clipboard. And this is a huge password. Basically, what Microsoft is giving me, something like demo VM something underscore underscore something like this. It's a huge password what Microsoft is giving me. The reason Microsoft is giving this password to me is that, let's go a bit back. Okay, let's basically go inside the virtual machine. Let's what are we doing is that we are trying to extract the data that is there in the disk of the virtual machine, right? And when we were creating this out, there is something known as SSE with PMK, meaning when we are creating a disk of the virtual machine, we had an option that data at rest is encrypted with platform managed keys. Does anyone recollect this? So when I'm creating a virtual machine service out here, and when I'm creating, let's say, or when I'm basically, I want to create a virtual machine service out here. So let's say go ahead and create this virtual machine. And let's go into the disks out here. And do you see an option out here, guys? Encryption at rest with platform managed keys. And I said that your disks, your data is encrypted. It's in an encrypted format when the data is not being used. That's the reason it's known as an encryption at rest. Meaning your virtual machine has crashed now. You cannot use your disks out here. So the Microsoft service has done what? It's encrypted all my disks out here. So if I go into the virtual machine service out here, all my data right now is in an encrypted format. It's in an encrypted state. That's what it's trying to tell you. Is that all your virtual machine data is in an encrypted state. So in order to do a recovery, you need to firstly decrypt it. And this is the decryption key what Microsoft is giving you, because Microsoft is handling all your encryptions right now. So this is where Microsoft is telling you, okay, fine, you know what, I'm giving you something known as a decryption key out here. So please go ahead, firstly decrypt, let's say, or let's say do a decryption, and then I'll allow you to go ahead and restore your data. So let me give this a refresh. So what I'm doing right now is I'm decrypting my data so that I can restore my data back again. So for that, let me again go into the file service out here. So you have a file recovery services. I've already downloaded something out here, and I have a key again. Let's come back here one quick minute. And once I have this out here, I downloaded something known as an exe file. So I said, okay, fine, file recovery. I selected this out, and I'll now execute this exe file on my computer. And it says, please enter the password from the portal and press enter. So I'll say, okay, fine. I'll take this password. Just a second. Take this password. I'll take this entire password out here. I'll place it here. I'll say enter. Yes, the directory was successfully created, and I'm launching something in an admin mode. Says okay, fine. And let me enter the password again. Now it says okay, fine. I've launched something known as a PowerShell console on your system, and it says please enter Y to proceed. I'll say Y. It's saying okay, fine. Older sessions have been disconnected, and now basically I'll go ahead and let's say mount devices on your system. So as of now, in my local machine, if I go into this PC, I have a data D, I have let's say an E folder, I have basically a H drive out here. Now what Microsoft is trying to do is that Microsoft is trying to attach the disks it had on the virtual machine on top of let's say my local machine. So whatever disks that were there or whatever data was there in that particular virtual machine is now being or Microsoft is now trying to attach it as external drives to my computer. And if you see, I am getting a G and an F right now. So as you see right now, I am getting two external drives or two network drives known as a G drive and an F drive right now. And Microsoft is now identifying that, okay, fine, you have like two drives because you had an OS, you had a recovery drive, or let's say you have a temporary drive. So inside my virtual machine service, I had these two things outside. So let me go into my virtual machine service. So let me go into the demo VM and let me just do an RDP session into it. Just see, and I'll just do an RDP session into this particular virtual machine service out here. Okay. And I'll just connect to this particular service out now. So I'm going into the PC, and once I go into this particular virtual machine, I have two drives, a C drive and and a D drive. This is a temporary drive, and inside the C drive, I have a file known as sample text. So when I did a file recovery service, what Microsoft did is that it identified there are two things out here. One is let's say a system reserved, which is an F drive, and it attached another drive known as a G drive. And if I go inside this G drive, whatever files were there on top of my virtual machine, all these things are now getting reflected on my local machine right now. And this is the sample file basically that I placed on the virtual machine. So if I go into the virtual machine service, this is the sample text file, and all the data will now be available on your local machine so that you can go ahead and recover all those things out. Okay, so this is how you do a file recovery service. So again, you go into the virtual machine, click on file recovery, download the executable, take the password, and then basically go ahead and restore all your files. And once you're done with recovering all these things out, you can say unmount the disks. And it'll say, okay, fine, I'm unmounting the disks out here. And all these disks, after let's say somewhere around 10 minutes, it's it says queue to exit. So I'll say queue. And after let's say some time, it says unmount successful. And after about like 5 or 6 minutes out here, let me close this out. After 5 or 6 minutes out here, these partitions will not be seen again. This will be unmounted. So I'm mounting all the data, extracting it out, then doing an unmount. So all these now are kind of getting disappeared. So this is how the service is actually going to work. Finally, I want to say that okay, fine, I am done with all the backup and etc. I now want to delete the vault. I now want to delete all the resource groups and etc. inside it. Now the procedure to delete the resource group is not a straightforward procedure, or the procedure to delete the vault is not a straightforward procedure. You'll have to go inside the vault, and firstly, you'll have to go on the properties of the vault. So I'm going to the recovery services vault, and inside this, I'm going to the properties. And in the properties, there is something known as security settings. I'll say update, and by default, there is something known as soft delete option enabled. I'll say disable and disable this out and save this out. So firstly, I'm disabling something known as a soft delete, and I'm saving this out. In a minute, it'll go ahead and save this out, and then after saving it out, I will have to stop my backup service, and only then I can go ahead and delete my vault. This is the procedure in where I can. This is the procedure basically which enables me not to do this. Let's see. Let's see this. I'll say disable. I'll say disable. I'll say save this out. It's taking some time not to go ahead and save this out, so I'll just say reload. I'll just try to disable this out once again. Say update. Yeah, it's in a disabled state right now, so it got disabled. So all my security settings are now disabled. After this is disabled, I will go into backup items, and this is the service basically that's getting backed up, which is called a virtual machine, and I will stop that backup service. So it's taking a bit longer time basically to in order to show all these things out. So just give it a second to load the service. So it says there is Azure virtual machine that's being backed up right now. I'll say okay, fine, please go into the service, and I'll say disable that particular backup and delete it out. So let's wait for a minute, and once I get the service, I can go inside it, and I will say stop the backup, and I will delete the backup data. These are the two things that I will perform. So before performing the stop and the delete option, guys, please make sure to disable the security settings. And this is not advisable to do, let's say, on a production workload machine. But since we are doing a demo out here, we'll still have to go ahead and disable all these things out. So that that's the reason I'm going ahead and I'm saying stop the backup data. And once it's there, it'll say, okay, fine. I'll delete the backup data. I don't want the backup data. There are two options. You can retain and you can delete. And it says what is the name of the backup item. I'll say it is demo VM. This is the name. And I can just select any other option. I'll say stop the backup data. Just stopping and deleting the backup data. Once this is done, you can now go ahead and delete your resource group. Until this point, it will not allow you to go ahead and delete anything out here. This is how powerful backup and recovery services are. Any questions until this point, guys? Anyone? Any questions? Anything online, offline, guys? Any questions still? No? So the task for you all today is please go ahead. I've basically explained how do you do a file recovery. Please try a restore virtual machine service out here. So please try to restore the entire virtual machine. See how that's working out for you all. Okay. Any questions till now, guys? Anything till now that I can take? Anyone? Any questions? Okay, if there are no further questions, then we are good to close the session, guys. And we'll meet tomorrow and we'll speak more about a concept known as site recovery and how do you do that and etc. Okay, guys,
Hello,
thank you.
hello, sir.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Sir, in yesterday's class, we have created virtual machines and attached
Mm-hmm.
a disk board. Data disk we
I'm
have
sorry.
attached it.
Yes, yes.
So while creating data disk, it has been asked to how many we can share that data disk to how many virtual machines or so. So I've
Yes.
selected over 5 and I attached that to the more than 2 virtual machines.
Hmm.
Okay, I was using both the virtual machines and I've stored the data in both the virtual machines in the disk, but I can't see that data from one virtual machine to other. Why?
Can you please share me a screenshot, because when you just are telling that, I'm not able to understand basically why, I mean, what data is not getting reflected. So if you can just share a
From
screenshot
one
of the
virtual
problem.
machine to other virtual machine. I
That's
can't
right.
see
That's
that.
what I'm telling. So if you can share a screenshot of that, I can help you with it.
Okay. Sir, one more doubt. I've created the data disk of 1 terabyte, 1 TB,
Okay.
1024 GB.
Okay.
When I use it on both the virtual machines, how the data gets calculated over that? Means it will
So it
be
depends upon how you're writing the data. It depends upon how your application is writing the data. Both the virtual machines share that 1 terabyte drive, meaning you can have 1 terabyte, let's say in VM1 and VM2 also. But now it comes down to a point wherein how your application is writing the data into the disk out there. So it